agriculture, the right agriculture partners, the right buyers, etc., to make these projects feasible and possible. So I'll give you a few examples of the kind of things specifically for Brazil that we've had our team start looking in Brazil. We know that Brazil has a huge green ammonia potential. So we've been talking to Electrobras about the possibility of using some of the hydropower to generate green ammonia in Brazil for the Brazilian market, but also for exports into foreign markets. So that's one example of the type of project we're looking. We're looking also at 3 ports that are critical for the green hydrogen market and green hydrogen market exports of Brazil that have been pre-identified also with the Brazilian government. Similarly, we've been looking at distributed energy solutions, clean distributed energy solutions for data centers. So AECOM is already working with all the major data center companies like AWS, Microsoft, Google. We're doing most of the data centers in Brazil, Olata as well. And we've been looking now at how do we do renewable energy solutions for distributed energy for those data centers. So those are some examples of the kind of things we've been looking. Of course, as Rodrigo knows, we've been looking also at sustainable tourism. We've been looking at options of regenerative agriculture, and I'll give you an example on that, very specific. We were talking, the most ambitious program to try to prevent deforestation, degradation, or to try to regenerate the Amazon is the program that the Colombian government has put together. Essentially investing roughly $320 million a year in conservation of the Amazon. Their plan is to give each family about $2,500 a year so that they regenerate or they stop deforestation of the Amazon. Our teams in AECOM have done an analysis, and that's way short of what's needed. We understand that roughly to try to prevent any of those families from engaging in informal or illicit activities will probably require 4 times those resources. So roughly like $10,000. But we've worked back our numbers, working also in conjunction with a couple of other NGOs working in the Colombian Amazon, and we see that it's completely feasible to do sustainable acai, to do sustainable forestry projects, where families can be easily generating not only 4 times those revenues, but probably more than that. So we see that the One Amazon Investment Fund as a catalyzer. And for AECOM, it's truly a pleasure to be engaged in helping develop that pipeline in each of the countries of the Amazon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jaime. And John, let me get back to you. As we are structuring the One Amazon investment vehicle, and as we are about to launch with $70 million as a pilot, on both the large-scale, more infrastructure projects, as well as on the more projects deep within the Amazon, such as ecotourism and co-ops, how do you see the One Amazon Impact Fund investment vehicle working with Brazil Invest ADIB with $100 billion to be deployed in Brazil, $20 billion in sustainability, or with incredible organizations such as IDB that have actually enormous relationships, experience throughout all the 8 Amazon countries?
Scared to speak on your behalf.
So.
No, from a structure perspective, at the end of the day, if this is a preservation play on the Amazon in its own right, it will not work. It needs to have a return on investment. It needs to be attractive to investors. So the data component, the feeding of the information on the Amazon, finding other revenue sources is key. Taking the 70% of each token and looking at that through the impact fund and investing and co-investing in projects If you were to look at it from that perspective of, we're looking at blue-green economy, local projects, small scale, large scale in Brazil, and in other markets, Brazil has a fully interconnected power grid, a number of brilliant kind of biofuel feedstocks, lots of preservation. IBAMA in Brazil, the environmental body, is probably the strongest in the world. So Brazil is not foreign to strong environmental policy. The question is how do you monetize that policy and how do you export that policy? How do you export a green grid in Brazil, whether it's green steel, hydrogen to ammonia, other projects like that, reforestation deals, coupling together most of the clients that I have in Brazil that ask for deals that are in late stage development. These aren't PowerPoint projects, these are smart projects that could be exporting, could be raising capital, struggle with development capital, struggle with what I call the missing middle. You have venture capitalists, you have strategic funds. I think that even with the exodus of a couple of $100 billion in sustainable funds over the last 2 years, due to poor initial investments, it's still a $1 trillion market. It's still a monster fund of investment. But there is a bit of a missing middle here. There's this incubator type concept that projects need development capital, late stage capital to get to FID. So the way I look at One Amazon is really from the eyes of how are we going to get more transactions done in Brazil? How are we going to take deals that make sense, that are impacting blue-green economy at the local level, creating jobs? I'm not a big believer in, handing out dollars to help with avoidance of deforestation. I'm a believer in long-term sustainable local economies that's going to create jobs, create telehealth, teleeducation systems. When you're looking at that, these are things that when you talk about distributed data means distributed power. We're going to need distributed data for One Amazon token and verification. There's ways to piggyback that and pull that thread through a number of different investments. So for me, a number of the technologies that we're looking to deploy are investable opportunities, to your question. For One Amazon, we'll be bringing in the expertise of AECOM, bringing in the technology stakeholders that we know from other transactions, and helping these deals and these local developers with the dollars they need, but then we'll be bringing in co-invest opportunities, and hopefully these opportunities will be presented to investors in One Amazon, but also other fund vehicles that can co-invest in those projects. But you really need to enhance the transaction itself. Most of the counterparties, this could be a project in Florida, in Texas, anywhere. Most of the developers around the world do not have the holistic expertise of how to get their idea to fruition and how to raise that capital. So part of the access to One Amazon is not only capital and tokenization and preservation, but it's really this combination of folks like AECOM and Goldman and others to say, how do we bring the expertise to that opportunity to get it to bankability? Once we get it to bankability, it becomes an investment opportunity for funds and other vehicles in Brazil and externally, because the attractiveness of saying that you're going to co-invest with a vehicle that's preserving the rainforest has weight, it has currency to it. So we're going to be able to bring that and hopefully bring in other investors to some of the larger investment opportunities as well.
Thank you very much, John. Gabriel, let me ask you to share a little bit about the IDB experience and what IDB has been doing in the Amazon, especially recently with so many Amazon initiatives, and how do you see in your perspective the potential collaboration of what IDB is already doing and collaborating with the One Amazon Impact Fund? Thank you.
Hello, yeah, sure. First, when I hear John and all the panelists here, it's music to our ears, because I think much of what has said resonates to our own views. So very quickly, in terms of the IDB, President Goldman, when he took office, he created an initiative which is called Amazon Forever, which is basically an umbrella coordination initiative in which the IDB has allocated funds to run a coordination unit that basically brings together not only the IDB, IDB Invest, and IDB Lab, but the World Bank, the IFC, and private investors as well. There's a lot of data-driven information on that, on businesses. We are launching a Amazon 360 dashboard very soon, which presents a range of business opportunities in the Amazon. We have also focused as a development bank on developing business in the Amazon, and I'm so glad to see that over the past 2 years since we started, we have grown fourfold in terms of our investments in the Amazon. Like IDB Invest alone last year, we're able to deploy over $350 million in projects in the Amazon. Our strategy is centered in many pillars, and it's a strategy that's not centered on conservation per se. We have a pillar. Well, first of all, there are over 40 million people living in the Amazon basin of the Amazon country. So it's close to 50 million by certain numbers, number one. 75% of those people are in cities. So the Amazon is a highly urbanized region. So one of our pillars is smart and sustainable cities. And for us, for instance, we have invested a lot, for instance, on programs for water supply and sanitation, urban mobility on those cities, because we want to foster better conditions, business opportunities in the urban areas. A second pillar of attention to us is a pillar dealing with what we call, and Nino spoke of regenerative agriculture, a pillar on sustainable agribusiness, and that involves forestry and a number of other initiatives. Then we have a pillar focused, again, something that Nino said, on the transboundary issues, and their safety security is fundamental. And then the fourth pillar relates to conservation per se. So, and there are other initiatives under it, but I want just to pick back on what the panelists have said, the value of data, for instance. I'll give you a point that illustrates the potential. In the state of Pará alone, state of Pará in Brazil, there are 11 million hectares of degraded land that can be used for forest regeneration. 11 million hectares. And actually, both the federal government of Brazil is structuring concessions for forest regeneration, and the state of Pará, and I thought that Governor Helder Barbalho was on the program, and I just sent him an email yesterday with an LOE, a letter of intent for financing. They have launched the first ever project, a concession for forest regeneration in a state forest called Triunfo do Xingu. This is going to be open in the Bovespa B3 in March 29th. Basically a project to try to monetize the value of forest regeneration through carbon credits and a number of other things. We've talked to many, why I'm telling you this example? Because it resonates. We've talked to many off-takers, big off-takers. Obviously you can probably guess, they're all American, they're all from the western part of the United States, a specific valley. But what they tell us, we would love to invest. We want those credits, but we need to trust them. We need the information. We cannot run a reputational risk of investing something like this and realizing later that, we didn't get credit. So data, how that data is generated, how robust is that data, I think it's fundamental for this market. A second pillar that's really critical, I think it relates to what John said, is financial structures. None of us in the banking sector, be multilateral private banking, we're working with BNDES in Brazil, was just there last week. We're working with banks in Japan, trying to extract modalities so that we can finance projects that involve very long-term, tail end type revenues, associated with for instance, carbon credits. And part of being able to develop a structure like that goes through, again, John mentioned that, data. Because if investors can trust the information, you're providing a significant factor of de-risking to those investments, and you make them more attractive. So this is another pillar that we work on. I'm just giving you some examples of why this discussion is so important for us, and what the IDB group brings to the table, I think much more than its financing, because when you hear a fund of $100 billion investing $20 billion in sustainability, That's bigger than what we can invest on a yearly basis. We invest about, together, private and public, about 21, 22 billion a year in the region. But what we bring to the table is our knowledge. We have been present in these countries for over 65 years. We have relationships with the states and the government, but the states are long-term relationships. For instance, as part of our Amazon initiative, we have created a forum of Amazonian ministers of finance that meet twice a year. We bring the ministers of finance together to talk about what can we do in the Amazon. We're going to have one meeting. Then our next meeting is actually at the end of March in Santiago, during our annual meeting of governors, in which all the ministers of finance are going to have a specific meeting on the Amazon. So what we bring to the table: knowledge, long-term relationships, expertise, convening power, and obviously financing, right? As an MDB, we bring say a seal of approval and quality that entice others to come along, and that's part of our mission also, to foster the inflow of fresh capital into the region. We don't need to lead, we just need for the world, specifically in the Americas. Climate regulation, but not only that, a range of other environmental that affects inflation all over the world, but specifically in the Americas. So there are so many links that drive the need to find, as Mr. Russo said, permanent solutions and sustainable solutions. I'm very much along the lines of what John says. I think I don't simply discredit our initiatives on conservation, but I think what we need to do is to develop long-term sustainable alternatives that bring jobs, because those 50 million people, they want to have access to services. They want to have access to many of the things we do, right? And to the extent that we can find solutions to provide those accesses, we will be reducing pressure on the forest, right? The agribusiness that operates in the Amazon, yes, they have been a major vector of deforestation, including illegal deforestation over the years. But again, if it's man-made, just paraphrasing, we can resolve it, right? But when you bring the issue of efficiency, right, higher productivity, vertical production, they can still operate without deforesting hectare and be able to produce more of what they are producing. So, if we put our minds together and our muscle together, I think we can drive a transformation in the Amazon. So, thanks again for the.
Thank you, Luciano.
Actually, I just want to stress one very important point John made. It's probably the most important point, the for-profit investment, right? And I'll give you a classic example. We raised $100 million initially for sustainable projects back in the UK. Nobody wanted to touch it. And then, we had to get the Scottish government to actually invest into it. And when we returned a 3.2x net cash on cash return, we had $1 billion thrown on our table, right? And so it's about making sure that there is that success. And I think John's point is so valid. Governments, foundations, family offices, and so on and so forth. The second point is also about data. We have to get the data faster and make sure that it can be consumed quicker. We can't wait for 15 years for the data to be perfect, right? We'll have to try and generate as good and perfect data. It's not going to be 100%. We can finesse it as we go along. But I think over a period of time, if we're able to get that data in the first 2 or 3 years and throw that out into the market, I think we're able to generate better results at the end of the day.
100%. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment on the synergies between multilateral banks and One Amazon and other funds? Which is, one of the things we're finding is there is very detailed bottlenecks that stop investment. I'll give you an example, the lack of land use plans in many of these cities and towns and states that do not prevent an illegal logger from going in, but do prevent formal investments from coming in, right? So the synergies of the ability to leverage the knowledge, the technical capacity, the credibility of multilateral banks like the IDB in working in partnership with One Amazon to support the states, the cities in developing the regulations, the frameworks that we need so that we can start creating the projects and deploying the capital is critical. So that partnership, the same way we're trying to work on the partnership with CAP, is really important to make this venture possible.
Thank you so much, Jaime. Renato, so as I mentioned, we were thrilled to be one of Brazil Invest, the first receive the first investments, honored. And right from the get-go, from the ecosystem of Brazil Invest, we were thrilled to connect with Keith and his team, with the Producers Trust, which are crucial for us as we expand the project. Renato, if you could share a little bit of your vision, how do you see, especially with your $20 billion that will be deployed in sustainability in Brazil, how do you see One Amazon Tech Fund growing together with the Brazil Investment?
Yes, when you're talking about this, I was just thinking that we talk in Amazon and the whole world. But there is a lot of fake companies doing bad jobs in Amazon, using just for money and other things. So when we know each other, know who you are, know how serious you are, how serious is Gorilla Technology, Icon, John, Goldman Sachs, we see opportunity to really connect projects, funds with our government. Because you know that we are working with One Amazon with the federal government, signing some protocols there. That's not so easy in Brazil. So our part is really looking for consistent projects to grow up together and develop this. In Amazonia, we are looking for seaports that we use like clean energy too. We are looking for many other areas, not just in Amazonia, but of course, the focus, the main goal is Amazonia. So help the community there. There is some people in research, we have a lot of people with no energy, no water, no internet. People that die every single day because they don't have like the basic that we have. So it's unbelievable that we have a lot of communities in Amazonia with this problem. So our part here together with networking and capital is build an ecosystem that have communities that help people build smart cities together with Gorilla to help these communities. It's unbelievable when we have some research start to read this and say, I can't believe that this exists. So, so I'm so grateful that we meet each other in this point, that we can build together with all these amazing companies here and help people in Brazil, because really Amazonia needs this. Serious people working, not just thinking about money, but in a better life for Brazil and for the world.
Thank you so much, Renato. And just before we pass it to the next panelists, two things that I would like to do. One is to make an announcement and invitation to all of you. This year, in the Nobel